Welcome back to the Caffeinated Christian Podcast. I know we've been away for a few months, but we've been busy in the office and in the studio recording a brand new series on truth for you guys. This is the first episode in the brand new series, What is Truth? And we are coming at you with the topic of what is truth, actually. That's the title of the podcast that we have today. We're going to be examining different definitions of truth, different theories of truth, defeaters for certain theories of truth, and where we find truth in Scripture, and how, as one who holds a Christian worldview, grounds their understanding within these theories and within Scripture. So we're really excited to be here with you today in this brand new series on what is truth. So let us begin.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to a special series from the Caffeinated Christian called What is Truth? As many of you know, we live in a highly relativistic age. Truth is largely subjectivized. It's individualized. Your truth is your truth. My truth is my truth. His truth, her truth. It's hard to be a Christian these days, isn't it? It's just really hard to be a Christian and reason and rationalize with people who do not hold to the same worldview as you do. If you don't have a grounding of what is true, what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is evil, it's really hard to function in a civilized society. And as you've noticed, as this theory of relativism has really gained ground in our culture, as it's gained a foothold, no surprise, society has become more and more divisive. Society, culture, everything that we kind of have taken for granted is starting to unravel. So we're trying to come at this from a Christian perspective and say, what do we do as followers of Jesus to move culture forward in a positive direction, rather than getting caught up in this age of outrage and relativism that we find ourselves in today. We're seeing the byproducts of what this worldview is
exponentially too
doing, just a lot. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to explore the question, what is truth? And we're going to start at this from kind of a philosophical angle. We're going to really just address this commonly held notion in our culture that says, my truth is my truth and your truth is yours, and I can just define it however I want to. And so to really get on the same page here, we need to talk about what is truth. Can truth be known? Is truth objective, or is it subjective?
Right.
And so to start off this special series, Ryan is going to share some of his thoughts on relativity.
What is truth?
Relativism.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so this is kind of a two-parter, as Mike and I discussed. This first part is going to sort of take a look at asking the question, let's define what truth is, and then let's look at the commonly held sort of theories of what truth is. And then the next time that you'll hear me lead a podcast, it will be asking the question, hey, now that we sort of hold to a specific theory, and we're going to examine what the Old Testament, New Testament understand to be truth, is we're going to dive deeper, get more nuanced in relation to certain contexts that people hold truth within that specific theory.
Right.
And so it's like, let's go high, then let's keep getting lower and lower and lower till we really sort of nuance this out.
Right.
To help us understand better.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep. For us to live differently, we need to get on the same page and concerning what truth actually is. So let me just ask you this, Ryan. We'll start off with this question. What is truth?
Yeah.
What's the definition you would give?
So I think the best definition is truth is a property of a proposition that stand behind the words that we are being used. So basically, truth, a sentence holds that which is true, a property of this sentence, right?
Okay.
And then the next question is like, it still begs the question like, well, which sentence is true? Right? So what? So the sentence can hold this truth value. But the question is like, how do we know if the sentence is true or not? What helps us understand what makes something true?
Right.
And that's
so something isn't true just because I say that it's true.
Correct, exactly.
Okay.
And there are different what they call theories of truth to help us gnaw at that problem of, okay, how do we know if this sentence is true? How do we know if the sentence holds this property?
Okay.
Does that make sense so far?
So how do you know something's true then?
Exactly. So, well, I think it depends on the theory you hold. And I am going to propose, and I'm going to show that Scripture holds something called the correspondence theory of truth.
All right.
And this theory is best understood as this, that whatever corresponds to the reality is true. And
whatever makes sense of the reality that you and I inhabit right here, right now, today.
Absolutely. So the best way to look at it is like, we have the fact of the matter, like where we have what reality is showing. Like I am wearing a blue sweatshirt is true if I am wearing a blue sweatshirt.
I think like I need to breathe oxygen.
Correct.
And we have gravity.
Yeah.
Right.
Mike has 2 children is true if and only if Mike has 2 children.
Correct.
And let's go back to my blue sweatshirt. You might see purple, and I would go, well, here's my problem. Your vision is not working correctly.
I'm colorblind, right?
You're colorblind, right? So that doesn't mean my shirt isn't purple, and that will get into relativism and how we look at certain things. But the question is what reality is, and the best way to look at this, I try to propose this, is like a puzzle piece. We have this one puzzle piece of the way reality is, and this other piece sort of like this sentence or what we're saying is true. And we want them to connect perfectly into each other. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
And so that's what correspondence theory says. Like what we think, what we say, what we do needs to connect perfectly as a puzzle piece to the way reality corresponds to reality actually is.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
So that's what I'm proposing, that we understand truth in theory to be in relation to other theories.
So what are some of the other theories, and what is, if you could get into, what are some of the other dominant theories of truth that have taken a foothold in our culture today?
Absolutely.
Among millennials and Gen Z.
So I think there are 4 main dominant theories. There's more, but some of them are obscure, and we don't really need to talk about it because some of them you're going to go, really?
Yeah.
Like, really?
Right.
I think sometimes it belongs to the philosopher at the university just to take these weird views just for fun because they got to write something for online. But so the 4 main theories is 1, the correspondence theory of truth.
Right.
The second, the pragmatic theory of truth. I'll go over all of them.
All right.
Third, the consensus theory. And 4th, the coherence theory. So let me define each one of these for you. The correspondence theory, as we just examined, is whatever corresponds to reality like this puzzle piece is true. The pragmatic theory of truth states this, that what is true is what is useful or beneficial to you, almost like utility. What's a good utility
so
for my
totally
life?
Utilitarian.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So if this helps out our church or my family, therefore that is true. And we're going to go through some of the objections to some of these, but I know a lot of people in society just look at politics that if I need money or I need to do this, even if I lie or do this sort of thing, it almost and I said lie, that's assuming that we know it to be false, but if I were to do this because it's beneficial to me, this thing is true in my world.
Right.
That's what the pragmatic theory of truth in simple really says. The consensus theory of truth, simply put, is what is true is what everyone agrees to be true.
Which seems to be what is happening in our world today.
Yes, 100%. If we can, which is very weird because usually these views that I'm sure you're referring to, like 3% of the people actually hold to, but people don't want to get yelled at or canceled, so they just go. I think actually I might push back on that. I might say that a lot of these non-Christian beliefs that people hold to are more pragmatic.
Okay.
And what that means is there's a utility of not being canceled. There's a utility of not being yelled at. There's this utility of not getting kicked off of something.
I don't want to lose my job.
Exactly.
I don't want to lose my relationship
because
circle,
the small percentage is doing this to the large percentage.
Right.
And so I think it's more pragmatic than consensus.
I gotcha.
If I were to...
Is there a little bit of consensus in there, you think?
I think there's a little bit in there, but I think the more dominant view of why we accept things is more pragmatic than consensus.
Yeah.
I think we could have a consensus that getting canceled is false.
Right.
And so therefore that's true.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I do think you can have a blend of these things.
Right. They're not
'cause-
mutually exclusive.
Exactly. And once again, I think one could argue, well, getting canceled is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
So
Right.
that goes into the problem with consensus theory of truth. And the last one is the coherence theory of truth, which is so weird. Wait till I get into these. Mike, you'll like some of these.
Okay.
This basically states that claims are true if they follow logically and coherently from a set of axioms. And what this says basically is something is true if it can logically follow from like a set of propositions or a set of axioms or a thought logically, right?
Okay.
And so if I can think of something that is logically coherent and follows a correct set of logical axioms, that is true in the world.
All right.
Now, I think the last three are just completely wrong. I think we need to hold to the correspondence theory of truth. And let me show you some problems with the other theories, if I can, and reasons why we should reject it versus the correspondence theory of truth. It is true that I'm wearing a blue shirt because I am actually wearing a blue shirt. And so let's first talk about the coherence theory of truth. And remember, the coherence theory of truth, if it follows logically and coherently with a set of axioms.
Right.
I want to offer three main problems why we should reject this theory of truth. And like you said, this is getting to the philosophy, getting into the weeds a little bit. The first is what is called the specification problem. Wow.
Okay. You're good.
I need more coffee. Specification problem, or the specification objection. Well, we'll just edit that out.
Right.
It states this: two propositions can be logically true yet contradict each other.
Okay.
The problem is they both follow coherently from a set of axioms. Are they both true?
Okay. Can you give us an example?
Sure. There's nothing logically incoherent to saying my phone has a black case and my phone does not have a black case. Both sentence follows logically from nothing's wrong with that sentence.
Right.
It follows perfectly from axioms of language and logic that I can say that my phone does not have a black case. But the problem is, if they're both true, these two propositions contradict each other.
Right.
So you would have to allow for contradictions
in the coherence theory.
in the coherence theory of truth because you run into these massive problems. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfectly.
The second one is called the transcendence objection.
Okay.
And this states that we are unable to account for the fact that some sentences are true which cohere with no sets of beliefs. And so the best way to easily understand it is there might be sets of beliefs that no one has come up with yet, or no one knows, or no one thought of that is perfectly logical or coherent, right? We just don't know.
Right.
But the problem is we are unable to know these things as true because we don't have these sets of axioms yet. Nothing has followed from it because we just don't know. We are unable to account for truths that we just don't fit within our modern logic and language, which is not good, right? We want to say some things are true independent of us.
Sure.
Right? I think that's a
otherwise you just become the sole arbiter of what truth is.
Yeah, it becomes like a weird constructivism type view where it's humanity that makes things true. We construct it, right?
Right.
And so the last objection is called the logic objection. It says any talk about coherence presupposes the truth of the laws of logic. And so this theory has to correspond with certain laws of logic. Correspondence theory is embedded within the coherence theory.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
well, if that's the case, if we have to cohere to certain laws of logic, why wouldn't you think that regular life would have to cohere to the way reality just necessarily seems to be? Like, things are true if and only if it is the case. Like, why wouldn't we just hold the correspondence theory view over this one if the coherence sort of assumes the correspondence theory when it comes to laws of logic?
Yeah. So you need
correspondence.
You need that correspondence in order for there to be coherence.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And you don't have these other problems like you do.
Right.
So why don't you just hold the correspondence?
Because it doesn't fit with your version of truth.
Exactly.
You have to reject it.
Exactly. Which is silly to me.
And then you don't live in reality.
Exactly.
And if you don't live in reality, you have problems.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So the last view...
Which we'll get into.
Yeah, sorry. The second view is the consensus theory of truth, and there's 3 problems too. One is called the disagreement problem. Not everyone's consensus is the same.
Yep.
And the problem is, if we need to have a consensus, not everyone is going to agree on everything. So
God has given them a will and a mind, and
are we claiming that we can't know if things are true?
okay.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, if everyone can't agree on a consensus of what is true, this may bring us to the inability to have any truths.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just false, because we can know things are true independent of our consensus.
And independent of what we prefer or what we like or what we think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the unknowable problem is basically that how can we know what is true until literally everyone gives consensus on it? Like, we don't want to say we can't know things are true unless everyone gives consensus.
Right.
Let me give you a problem with that. We can know that not everyone gives consensus.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, we might all do we all agree on that statement? Can we know that statement? I mean,
That's true.
There's like this weird regress of problems. Like, well, do you agree on that? Well, do we agree on that we don't agree? Well, do we agree that we don't agree that we don't agree? And just keeps going back.
And if is something just true based on majority vote? Like, if you have 100 people, 99 of them agree that something's true and 1 doesn't, who's right?
Right.
What about 50-50?
I am wearing a blue shirt.
Mm-hmm.
If all of us in this room say that I am wearing a red shirt, does that make it true in reality that I'm wearing a red shirt, even though this is the color blue?
Right.
The consensus theory says truth of the matter is the fact that I am wearing a red shirt, even if the shirt is actually blue.
Right. Now, we both agree that you are wearing a blue shirt.
Correct.
Right.
Now, we can agree on the truth,
yes,
but us agreeing doesn't make something true. There's a key difference there. We can all have a consensus on what is true, but that consensus doesn't ontologically make something true.
Right. Of course.
So there's a key distinction between that. And lastly, the moral problem. Is it something morally true if we all agree on it?
Well, and you look back in cultures prior to ours.
Yeah.
There's a general consensus of what was true that we would say is terrible. Like,
absolutely.
Murder.
Right, but what's so funny is
infanticide, right?
That means then truth that it was objective to them changes to not be objective anymore to them.
Right.
Were they wrong? According to them, their consensus, they're not wrong. Well, according to us, they are wrong. But the problem is then we can't know what truth is. Mm-hmm. It's a huge problem. But I think the moral problem gets even worse if everyone in the United States, everyone, hypothetically, agreed that it is okay to torture innocent babies. Mm-hmm. The fact that it is morally good to torture innocent babies is true because we all agreed on it.
Right.
Think about that. It is logically possible that Nazism is a morally good thing on this account.
Right.
Crazy, right?
Yep. And do we want that again? Right?
Exactly.
Of course not.
Of course not. That's terrible. And the last one is the pragmatic theory, and I'll go through this quick. The first one's called the conflation problem, and it conflates truth with utility. Something cannot match reality yet still be true given its utility, right?
Okay.
Right. The last one is called the justification problem. We all don't agree on what makes some use justified, so how can we agree if something has this level of utility? We all can't agree on what justifies the appropriate utility, right? So how can we have a utility to this degree? It's almost in a sense that we have a epistemological problem. And the last one is what I call the future problem. Hindsight is 20/20. So what we thought was helpful may in fact be incorrect, and therefore what we thought was true was not.
Right.
And so we don't want to hold to a thing that is true when we can look back in 20 years, such as morals, and go, oh, that wasn't true. We want something objective that, in a sense, transcends our beliefs to make things true.
Yeah.
And so pragmatic theory, coherence theory, consensus theory, I think are littered with problems. But the question is, as a Christian, what does the Bible say?
It is.
Right?
Plain and simple.
What does the Bible say? And when you examine the Old Testament and the New Testament, I think we find that both the Old and the New exhibit truth to be that which corresponds to reality. Mm-hmm. It holds to the idea of correspondence truth, right? Let me just read you some things, stats I have from the Old Testament here, and on some ideas here.
Okay.
In the Old Testament, the term truth appears 120 times. And the majority reflect the use of the Hebrew word emet, E-M-E-T. The root meaning connotes support and stability, and it's connected with both truth and faithfulness. So there's two main categories within this idea of truth and faithfulness that we're going to find,
okay,
or emet that we're going to find. The first, obviously, let's look at faithfulness, right? And there's a few points we want to get with this. First, this term is referred to an attribute of God, which is huge, right? Nehemiah declares that the Lord has acted faithfully while everyone else has done wrong. Second, what is said of God can be applied to humans. Like, we need to act in the same way how God understands truth, right? And third, faithfulness or reliability can be extended to objects who don't have the capacity for decision making, right? So things can be faithful to the way reality is, independent of them actually having will,
right?
Which is such as like
the laws of physics,
nature, right? Stuff like that.
How the seasons go in our world.
Exactly.
Yep.
So a huge sort of root of this is faithfulness, which is it is being faithful to the way things actually are, right? And the last sort of idea behind this is the idea of conformity. The foundational issue is that emet, E-M-E-T, represents that which is conformed to reality in contrast to anything that would be deceitful or wrong. In Psalms 15:2, telling the truth is that which is contrasted to slandering and giving a false, malicious report. This is why the term emet can be used in reference without God's way without God like acting this way. Does that make sense? And so what I mean by that is we can have truth in the way that God acts, but you find in a sense in Scripture that God can't lie because God is only truth. So this deceitfulness, God cannot act in this way.
Okay.
Because God is truthful in all things that he does.
Right. There are things that God cannot be and God cannot do.
Correct. Exactly. Right. And conformity in Scripture, we see in 1 Kings 22 and 2 Chronicles 18. This also stands in stark contrast to that which is delusional.
Okay.
Which is interesting.
All right.
That when people are delusional, they are not seeing or understanding or conforming to the way reality actually is in Scripture.
Well, Scripture uses the language of being blind.
Exactly.
I think it's important that we understand that, especially in this world.
Exactly. And so in the Old Testament, this word emet, E-M-E-T, faithfulness, conformity, all in relation to truth. Truth is faithful to the way things are, and it conforms to the way things actually are. So the Old Testament shows this sort of correspondence idea that we see within our theories. And in the New Testament, we see this idea of conformity and correspondence as well. The concept of truth is also found in the New Testament writers. In the New Testament, the words grace and truth are often combined. This is reminiscent of the Hebrew phrase mercy and truth. The term truth occurs frequently in the New Testament, in fact, 183 times. And we see this in the term, I'm going to botch this, aletheia, A-L-E-T-H-E-I-A. And it distinguishes truth from what is false or the way reality actually isn't.
Okay.
We see this in Acts 12:9, in Philippians 1:18, also in 1 Timothy 2:4. Let me read this. There's a difference between that which happened factually in reality versus a dream or a vision.
Okay.
Right? There's a difference between empty pretense and correct motivation in Philippians. And the chance of not being saved based on belief in specific truth claims the Bible is making how reality actually works. So we see this idea of like, hey, you can actually not be redeemed because reality works in this specific way in order for you to have faith in. Like, you just can't all agree that we can be saved just by saying we want to be saved. This isn't consensus on how this works.
Right.
Salvation conforms to the way reality God actually designed it to be and how things are to actually play out.
And this brings us to some of the more problematic things that people in our culture see within Christianity.
Yeah.
Right? So John 14:6, where Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. And people who hold to those different theories of truth might try to circumvent that and make it say something that it doesn't say, where Jesus, I think, is pretty direct in his claim to be truth itself.
Yeah.
Right? Jesus himself says, I am the hinge point of all reality itself. Like,
think about it.
All reality comes from me. Right? That's what he's saying.
Could you imagine if all of us just said, you know what, we're going to give a consensus that Jesus is not the way? Does it make it true that Jesus is not the way?
It's not going to change what Jesus said.
Exactly.
Right?
And so that's why I think when we look at how truth works and how we are to understand it with it corresponding to the way reality actually is, Old Testament and New Testament both is replete with the idea that no, it's faithfulness and conformity. Faithfulness to the way reality is, and it conforms to the way the world actually is. And without these ideas, this idea of faithfulness and conformity to the way the world actually is, we have all these problems, which, as we see in the other sort of theories, they have all of these problems as well.
And we're bearing the fruit of that in our culture right now.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, we're seeing it.
Well, one of the things, and I want to give you some stats here, and then we can sort of lean away from the philosophy if that's helpful.
Sorry. Yeah, we could do that.
One of the things that really got me into this is my research within Gen Z. And I'm finding that millennials and Gen Z are increasingly getting more away from correspondence, understanding of truth, and like truth is what you want it to be. It's becoming relative to their own social norms and individuality. And let me just read you some of these stats about Gen Z, if I can, and why I thought this was really important to help understand the way we look at Scripture too, right? Let me give you 4 facts here. A large portion of these teens, 34%, believes something to be true makes that thing true.
Okay. What's the percentage?
34% of Gen Z.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy to think about?
That's a big number.
Right. And this goes to what you said about Pilate. What is truth? Right? 34% of Gen Z would say, well, what I want to be true or what I think is true, right? And Gen Z is the largest class of humans in the world right now. I think it's like somewhere between 60 and like 90 million. I forgot off the top of my head. That's a large capacity of numbers within that. And almost 40% of that. That's huge, right?
Yep. And Pilate is there asking this question, what is truth? As truth himself is staring him right in the face.
Right. It's crazy.
You know? And there's so many good, logical, reasonable things that we can hold to with it that make Christianity true, that things that God himself in his goodness and sovereignty has given us that are right in front of us today, and still we're asking the question, what is truth? And we're saying, a lot of people today are just saying whatever I want it to be.
You're like this, 58% of teens, almost 60%. This is from, I think, Barna and One World. I don't have the footnote in front of me. Think many religions can lead to the same conclusion. Okay. Almost 60% of our teens think that Christianity, truth claims and propositions are just as equal
to other
as
truth claims.
Every other religious truth claim.
But those truth claims contradict the truth claims of Christianity.
So you're talking about the idea that the coherence specification objection problem.
Right.
Truth propositions can logically be true but contradict each other.
Right.
Exactly. So
that doesn't work.
It doesn't work where the Islamic faith can say Jesus is not God. The Christian faith says Jesus is God.
That's a problem.
And those two things, or let's put it this way, Jesus, the only way to the Father is through me, the only other way. Islam, we can get to the Father by doing these specific things because he has allowed us to come through if we do these specific things demonstrated through faith. Right? And so we have these rituals and items as a way to the Father, and we have Jesus as the only way to the Father. These are mutually exclusive.
Right.
According to almost 60% of the teens in America that were surveyed, right? So this, like, obviously didn't survey every teen, would think that these two statements, though contradictions, are equal to each other. It's crazy to think about.
It's going to create a lot of cognitive dissonance in people.
Right?
Like, how could you live that way? Like, I just don't understand.
I don't get it either. Let me give you two more, which you'll like.
Okay.
The Barna Group states that 46%, or nearly half of teens, on par with millennials, so my generation stinks too, state,
My generation too, unfortunately.
I need factual evidence to support my belief. So what is crazy is this. Almost 50% need evidence that corresponds to the way reality is.
All right.
But 60% of us, of that, also says these things can be equally true even if reality doesn't match up with the way it is. It's very weird how these numbers, I think there's just this broad confusion among millennials, especially and Gen Z, of how logic works. But I don't know how you can say that almost all of us think that these mutually exclusive things can be equally true, yet you need evidence to support factual things.
Right. And what if the evidence doesn't support something, and then is it not considered true?
Well, according to some of them, if it's beneficial to them, just believing it to be true is true.
Right.
But then you don't want factual evidence. So there's this...
Right. and I think that's also part of the problem too. Like we're claiming something is true just because it's convenient for us, just because we think it's, I don't know, we just think it's helpful, or it requires the least amount of work for us. Like we live in a very, very selfish culture today.
Yes, we do.
It's like I want the least amount asked of me in terms of sacrifice.
Yeah.
And we're going to gravitate towards the thing that requires the least amount of work.
Yeah.
So I think some of the philosophies that have taken a foothold in our world have taken hold part in part because, I don't know, there's some people that just don't want to do the work.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's true of everybody, but I think that's part of why, like, I want something convenient for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to adopt something, even though there's something in me that says this is false.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm just going to say it's true because I don't have to do as much.
Right.
Right.
It's pragmatic for you, right?
It's pragmatic.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
the pragmatic theory of truth. So I think that's very much where we are.
Yeah. And it's so disappointing. Like, so let me ask you a question, Mike, being a pastor.
Sure.
When it comes to the idea of what is truth, what do you think the church needs to do? And I think there's two areas I want to get more nuanced with. I think we continue needing to preach the gospel because that is truth, right? But I also think we need to dive into things such as what we're talking about today.
Uh-huh.
Because I think so often the majority of the churches, high percent only stay in the Bible with assuming it's true.
Yeah.
Or don't jump into like the philosophy and helping us understand how to understand what truth is. How do we do this well?
Yeah, well, that's a question that we're still wrestling with right now. Our country, like right now, we're in the midst of this major moral shift. Like we're redefining what morality is, what good and bad, right and wrong is. Right? That's not there's not a broad consensus around that. I know I'm using that language.
Go ahead, because it's a part. I love it.
There was a point in time where there was a consensus around what is moral and immoral, but there isn't now. So that correspondence theory of truth was never really a part of our nation's culture. It was just that the broad majority of people in our country shared the same moral value. There was that general consensus that Christian moral values, moral virtues were worth holding to. And now there's a lot of scandal that's been connected to the church. Yeah. A lot of megachurch pastors have fallen from grace. There's the scandal that's taken place with the Catholic Church. I think that has done a lot of harm because people see this immoral thing that does not correspond with what Scripture teaches.
Right.
And they say, well, because this person over here did this bad, awful, terrible thing, therefore the Scripture isn't true. But the problem is, Scripture says that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. The people that did these horrible, heinous things, Scripture doesn't paper over the reality that they do this, but it tells us that they do,
right,
and that we will do horrible, terrible, awful things, and that God loved us anyway. So we need to really focus in on what does the Bible teach is true.
Yeah.
Right. We need to lean into the teachings and the way of Jesus. I think those are the big things that we need to focus on. But along with that, I think what I've come across is a lot of people have been deeply hurt by the institutional church, and I'm not saying we need to throw that away. I'm not saying that you stop attending church. I think that God has established local churches to be these outposts of His hope and His grace and His mercy and His love. I firmly believe that. That's why I'm a pastor. But what I've found is that because they've been hurt in their past, they haven't been able to release that. They haven't given that over to God. They haven't been able to correspond with what Scripture says is reality, which is forgive, right? Release that hurt and that bitterness and pain and trust God to be who God is going to be, and He's going to be the one that renders justice.
Yeah.
And so I think there needs to be a more intentional approach towards, teaching people to forgive. And this is not like clearly defined yet because we're still figuring out what this looks like because we're in a brave new world right now, right?
Yeah.
But along with that is getting people back into the habit of reading the Bible. Like a lot of people just don't do that. A lot of Christians don't do that. They're not in the habit of spiritual disciplines, prayer, silence and solitude, Sabbath. Like these things, again, we're talking about the correspondence of how reality works.
Yeah.
There's a reality in which God has created you to function in. And when you violate it, I'm going to quote a philosopher here, when you go against the grain of the universe, you get splinters.
Yeah.
When you go against the grain of the universe, you get splinters. Yeah. And there's a way in which God has created this world that you and I inhabit to operate. And when we go against the grain of it, we find ourselves in trouble. And so what I found in our church, there are marriages that are struggling.
Yeah.
More than some people listening in our church might think,
I feel like that's all churches, right?
It's all churches, and like I think COVID was an accelerant that like contributed to that and made things more difficult. But there's this sense of like I'm going to neglect these basic things that I need to do.
Yeah.
So there's spiritual disciplines, right? There's silence and solitude and Sabbath. Like you need to spend time with God, and you need to rest. You need to remind yourself that it's not all on you. That's what Sabbath is about.
And was supposed to be a reminder of God.
Yes.
Yes.
And His goodness and His grace and it's...
Yeah, I'm going to say something very, very unpopular right now.
Sure.
The Sabbath is not just necessarily physical rest.
No.
It's supposed to be mental appropriation on who God is throughout the day and giving thanks throughout the day.
Yes.
It's not sitting from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. resting while watching football.
No.
That's not the definition of what Sabbath is.
I mean, you can watch the Bills on your Sabbath, but don't let that be the only thing you do.
Right, because the Sabbath is not designed to just be about us.
Right. So I would say, coming back to that broad question of like, what is truth? Like there are some things that we need to do as believers that we have just altogether been neglecting. So we need to attend to the basics of spirituality. But we also this is going to sound remarkably unspiritual, but I think understanding what truth is and living into that, it requires sleeping 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
It requires eating properly.
100%.
It requires, and this is the pot calling the kettle black, exercising, right?
Yeah.
So God gave you the soul and the body that it inhabits for a reason, for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
That is true. And God has created these systems and these mechanisms in our world that is true. And when you do things that violate them, you get consequences. And now we have relational brokenness. We have a society that is frenetic and stressed and mentally and spiritually just anguished about all sorts of things. But I think it's because we have gone against the grain of what God has set up operatively in our world.
I agree.
You know?
We are back to like exercise and rest and stuff like that. We are designed to function properly within a specific range, right? Mm-hmm. And the goal as a Christian is to go, okay, what is the best way for me to function properly so I can properly function for God?
Right.
And if it means you need to sleep 8 hours a day because sleeping 4 hours a day because you want to play video games, you don't read because you're so tired, or you can't even think to read an intellectual book, you need to put down the video games and sleep 8 hours because you are not properly functioning for the mission God has called you to do in your life.
Yeah, and I think that's what the church needs to recapture. We need to be exemplars of this.
Yeah.
How do we live in the world that God has placed us in?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we just think about preaching the gospel and teaching the gospel, and all that's good, but are we modeling it? Are we living it?
Yeah.
Practically. So spiritual disciplines, your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, I think there needs to be a more comprehensive approach and holistic approach from the church in how we go about creating disciples. I guess that's what I was really trying to get at.
Oh, no, I like that. And whether you disagree, Mike and I will go toe-to-toe that this is what the Bible is saying is true about the way reality actually is. You might not like it, or you might think it's false, but if you hold to the truth of Scripture, this is what you find about ourselves within Scripture.
Yeah. And so if you say, like, I believe in Jesus, I believe he is the way and the truth and the life, right? But then you do nothing in your life to demonstrate that that's actually true, right? Then you end up becoming a hypocrite.
Yeah.
And we don't need more hypocrites in the church. We need people who genuinely follow, love, and serve Jesus with, what does Jesus say?
Yeah.
All your heart, soul, mind, and strength, with the totality of your being.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I think the church needs to emphasize moving forward.
And I think a lot of people hold to this. I believe Jesus is the way and truth and the life for very pragmatic reasons, such as they're afraid of hell. But the problem is that belief doesn't correspond to the way they actually live. But look at James. Like, the demons believed all these things.
Right.
And they still tremble. So if you're doing it for pragmatic reasons and it's not corresponding to the way your life is, look at James. The pragmatic theory here is not going to work for that salvation. Right. It just isn't.
And the other thing that I think the church needs to do, and this is something that I believe was unintended by the church, but nevertheless, this is the reality that we live in right now.
Right.
So much of the pushback with the millennials and with even Gen Z, you have this people within the church leaders, pastors, whenever a question or an objection towards some of the truth claims of Christianity are raised, the response is just stop asking questions, believe it. Right? We need to present to them a Christianity that can handle their questions, that can handle their doubts. And we haven't done that. We have done a terrible, terrible job of that.
100%.
And I think we have responded to those objections and questions out of fear because we don't actually know the logical, reasonable defenses. And what happens is those kids eventually go into college where they are presented with logical, reasonable objections, and they haven't been given the tools to respond to them.
Yeah.
So we're not giving them those. We need to give them those.
Yeah.
Which is what you're doing with Meeting in Maine, and why it's so important.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And then if we believe that Christianity is true, reality is going to prove it to be true.
Right.
And that's how I think we can end this. And we like you said to your objections, we are so afraid of, just be quiet and read the Bible. Well, just be quiet and do this. But if we as Christians truly believe that we hold the truth and we know the King of the universe.
Right.
These objections are not truly going to last in our intellectual endeavor, because reality will prove Christianity to be true.
Yeah, and what you have is you are surrounded by a group of people who have witnessed the truth claims of the Bible to be true in their own life,
Right.
who have seen a God that is faithful, and who have witnessed the faithfulness of other people who said, like, this Jesus thing is actually true.
Right.
Right? It's not just another theory among other theories. It's not another idea among other ideas. It is reality itself.
I agree.
It is what we were created for. And whatever question or objection you might have, like, don't just take it at face value. Like don't just assume something is true because it entered into your head. Just I've said this on the pulpit on more than one occasion. Just because you think something or feel something does not make it true.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're a Christian and you're doubting some core central doctrine within Christian faith, the Christian faith, like, there are a long history of people who have answered these questions and objections in a thoughtful and logical way that you owe it to yourself to consider.
I agree.
To consider those arguments. So
yeah, there's a very long lineage of brilliant, smarter than Mike and I will ever be combined.
Absolutely.
People who went to their grave fully following Christ.
Yep. If you want a good book that treats gives a logical treatment of the truth claims of Christianity, start with Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
Great book. You'll be glad you read it.
Yeah. Well, that is our talk for today on what is truth. We hope you guys enjoyed. We hope you guys learned a lot and took away some of the interesting information we brought to you and within our discussion. But stay tuned for next week. We are in the second podcast of the series, What is Truth? And we're going to be discussing truth of relativism. We're going to dive into that topic and really look at the relativistic worldview. So we hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you guys next week.